this is John Dawson of Patio Daddy-O Barbecue in Boise, Idaho, and I've got it locked on the 50,000 gigawatt blowtorch of the internet that is Barbecue Central.
Happy to have you aboard here for the really big barbecue show.
Boing. We cook because we have to, and we grill because we want to.
Hit me!
Fine, how's it going?
You have a great show. I'm a big fan.
Boing.
So what seems to be the problem here? This man looks like he's dead, and he's in the crackle.
Charbono! It's all about the charbono, dude!
Succulent fish! What?
He ate 54 wieners.
Now listen, Libertius, shut your face.
I'm shaking like a dog shit peach seeds.
We have top men working on it right now. Top men.
And just like that, we are into the second hour. It's the Barbecue Central Show. We talk about barbecue and grilling related items if you are just tuning in live right now. Too bad you missed the whole first hour. We almost had a segment with Meathead, and then we were followed up by a tremendous segment with Ted Conrad from Fireboard announcing the rollout of the new Analyze feature. So just wait for your app to update or uninstall, reinstall with a new one, and it should be right there down towards the bottom. Analyze. Check it out. Fireboard.com. This show is originating from
Palm City, USA, Cleveland.
Yes, that's right. If you missed the first hour, we are recording as well. Fear not. Hour one will make its way into the podcast feed a little later this evening / tomorrow morning. Second hour will be up on Thursday, and I'll talk to you about Friday here in just one moment. Don't forget, still to come on this show in about 13 minutes from now, first-time guest Larry Olmsted joins us. Meathead, a big fan of Larry. And you can also follow me socially at BBQ Central Show on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Snapchat / BBQ Central Show on Facebook and Twitch. There's also a live video feed over on YouTube, which is / RD Rempe, where there is a chat going on as well. We're also live over on Clubhouse as well. So if you'd rather hear instead of listen, hear instead of watch, then make sure you go over to Clubhouse and pick up the show. By the way, I see that Tyler Hathaway is in the Clubhouse tonight. Tyler, you need to send me an email with your shipping address so we can get you your prize from Sam the Cooking Guy last week. It's Greg, G-R-E-G, at thebbqcentralshow.com, and make sure that you send me that email along with your shipping address included in the body of that so we can make sure that we get you all squared away. We did get the other winner last week squared away. That was Johnny Maggs playing for Rod Schrader, and he is getting his Sam the Cooking Guy book in the mail if he doesn't have it already. Coming up on the best moments of the Barbecue Central Show in 10 minutes or less this coming Friday, episode 237, taking you back to June 12th, 2018, featuring Jennifer Caudle, who at the time was marketing director for a company called Hasty Bake. Not sure if she still is or not, but she was at the time. Jennifer talked about how she got to Hasty Bake. She was not an original employee, so she talks about how she made her way there and how she is the pitmaster of her household. And, of course, we all learned about the history of Hasty Bake. Back in 2018, Hasty Bake was celebrating its 70th year of being in business. So fast forward almost 5 years from that, and now clipping almost 75 years in business and going strong. Back then, they were touting themselves as being the oldest barbecue company in the USA. Some of you might question that and go, no, that's got to be Weber. Well, I guess 5 or 6 years prior to Weber getting into the game, Hasty Bake was making Hasty Bake grills, and it's the first one with a lid or a dome, if you will. So if you're not familiar with Hasty Bake, how dare you? You should be, but if you're not, or you're new to the industry or the lifestyle, then this is one you want to check out because Hasty Bakes are really cool, and it's really neat how they operate, and their heat can, or their coal drawer can adjust levels and help you control a heat in that way. And for those that have cooked on one or own a Hasty Bake, they love them and they swear by them. I think Meathead's a huge fan as well, along with Sterling Ball, I believe, is a huge fan. I talked about how they were big fans of the Sloans here. I believe they're also big fans of Hasty Bake. I've never cooked on one, nor I have never owned one. I would love one. Don't forget, if you want to hear a guest or segment again on this show that's been lost in the archives, just shoot John an email. He puts those shows together. John Solberg, Michigan Embedded Correspondent, EP of the Best Moments Show, JON, at thebbqcentralshow.com. Tell John what you'd like to hear, and he will do his best to meet your expectations. And now,
a Barbecue Central
2
Show
in a row.
Exclusive news update.
Greg Rempe reporting from the breaking news desk right here in Cleveland, Ohio, Bomb City, USA, the city that breaks the most live-fire breaking news across the country. Nay, the globe. And the official announcement is here. I mention it here on this show. And then great things happen. The deal's put together, locked and loaded. I will 100%ly be at the Hartville Hardware emceeing the 2022 Grill Fest event this year. Come get it. The event, which is now, I think, in its 5th year or 6th year, is set to take place on September 17th. That's a Saturday at the Hartville Hardware location, a great location across the nation. It's the largest independently owned hardware store in the country, perhaps the world, but definitely the country. And as I say each and every year as we start to promote it, to give you an idea of how big this location is, and there are other things on property. There's a flea market in the back. There's the Hartville Country Kitchen restaurant that's to the side of it. There's a hotel that I think that they own. But just the hardware portion of it, there's homes inside the hardware store. Wrap your head around it. For instance, I think I videoed the inside and outside of a whole ranch concept home inside the hardware store. It's crazy. And then they have a bunch of other ones as well. And then they have some demo fronts, if you will, giving you the look of walking into the house, seeing the kitchen family room kind of a thing. But there's a whole house, at least one, in the hardware store. So that gives you an idea of the size. But there's the Grill Fest. There's the whole grilling portion. I think it's 33,000 square feet of grills of various makes and models, huge accessories and components line, very impressive. All the fuels that you could think of that are available for sale, they have them there at Hartville. And this will hold a similar concept, so there will be live demos. Who will be live demoing? Well, glad you asked. Showing up for Traeger for however many years in a row, my pal Danielle Bennett, Diva Q, who's a delight. If you haven't seen her operate in front of a crowd, you're missing out. If you are around and you've never seen it happen live in person, Danielle is worth the price of admission. By the way, there is no admission price. You just get to show up and take in all the fun and frivolity that's going to happen on that Saturday, September 17th. But Danielle is top-notch in giving demos. Great personality, great with the information, great with the science. She's easily one of the best I've ever been around, and it's so great to interact with her during her demos. Typically, she does two during the course of the day. Also, making his debut at Grill Fest, but friend of this show, and you've seen him on here a number of times. He is a Dayton, Ohio resident, so coming across the state eastbound, Mike Lang from Another Pint Please. He, of course, will be representing or repping the Weber portion of this. So all the demos that take place use either a Traeger cooker, a Big Green Egg, or some type of Weber cooker. So anxious to meet Mike in person finally, and then also get to work with him in a question and answer and moderation MC type of situation. So looking forward to that. seeing what Mike has to offer. Maybe they're not even going to bring the big green egg in this year. They're just going to have Diva do 2 and Mike do 2. I'm sure Mike could pull 2 off without blinking an eyelash. This is something that's right up his alley. Always got great content, always bringing new things to the game. So very excited about that. And as soon as I hear from Hartville Hardware on who that big green egg rep will be, or if they're going to have one, I'll let you know who that's going to be. So once again, me all day MC, worth the price of admission because I'm fun and frivolous. Danielle Bennett, Diva Q, will be doing probably 2 live demos. I'm not enough to bring you in, she has to. And backing Diva up, Mike Lang, all friends of the show from Another Pint Please, and he'll be repping Weber. So 2 of the biggest names out there, 2 of the most recent brands going live and public last year, right around this time. So looking forward to the 2022 Grill Fest over at the Hartville Hardware location in Hartville, Ohio, the breadbasket of the greater Cleveland area. It's like an hour and change south and east of me. You got to check it out. It's fun. Very excited to see Mike and excited to catch up with Danielle. Before we get to Larry Olmsted this evening, I will talk to you about Green Mountain Grill, some of the best pellet cookers out there on the market today. In fact, just yesterday, I was whipping up a mess of chicken because I can get a little hot in that Green Mountain Grill by my choice. So I do more of a smoke roast. That's what Steven Raichlen calls it, a little smoke roasting. So only sold through dealers, greenmountaingrills.com. Find the dealer near you, visit the dealer, get educated, find the ones that might be right for you. A couple different lines to choose from. A choice line, so if you don't need all that nonsense like Wi-Fi connectivity or an app to do all of your up and down heat controls or custom cook cycles, internal meat probes, things like this, choice line is right up your alley. You can save a couple $100. You get a great cook. That's the one I've had for 10 years now, I think. Maybe longer than that. They also have a Prime line. So if you want Wi-Fi connectivity, if you want to have an interactive app experience where you can control the temperature of that pit and you never have to leave the house, you just use your app, you want to get the Prime line. A couple different sizes to choose from, the Peak and the Ledge, or if you want a completely portable experience, the Trek is the one you're going to want to find out. Again, go to the dealer. Touch them, feel them, ask your questions, get educated by the dealer sales. And then when you pick the right one, make sure you get that pizza oven insert because you're going to want that too. Nothing more fun than a Friday night of everybody making their own pizzas, and they're done in 2 to 5 minutes tops. Can't beat it. GreenMountainGrill.com. That's GreenMountainGrills.com. We're back with first-timer Larry Olmsted. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show, presented by the Ryder Deluxe Pellet Grills from Oklahoma Joe's. Howard Stern, Jim Rome, Dan Patrick, and Greg Rempe. The Mountain Rushmore of talk show entertainment. Now, let's get back to the Barbecue Central Show.
This portion of the show being brought to you by Pit Barrel Cooker, the most unbelievable outdoor cooking device on the planet. Currently available in 3 sizes with a host of accessories to choose from. If you're a beginner or a professional, doesn't matter. Definitely a cooker you want to add to the arsenal. Visit pitbarrelcooker.com and tell them the Barbecue Central Show sent you. My guest in the second hour, someone who I almost forgot I had been chasing since April of 2019. I saw a comment recently about Mabel's Barbecue in Las Vegas. Hit the message button on Twitter and then was quickly reminded that I had reached out to him back in 2019. Well, 3 years later, we are here to do the first of hopefully many interview segments about live fire and food in general. So let's race to the Oklahoma Joe's Ryder DLX Pellet Grills hotline and welcome in first-timer to the show, Larry Olmsted. Hey, Larry.
Hey, pleasure to be here.
Very excited to have you finally after I admittedly had realized I had reached out to you many years ago and then forgot I had reached out to you many years ago. So excited to have you. Now, look, we could certainly jump right in, talk about food, sports, your Guinness Book of World Records holdings, and all of this fun stuff. But if you don't mind, let's lay a little groundwork up front for those folks who may not know your writings or know who you are specifically. I get new listeners to the show all the time that are just new getting into barbecue and food per se. So where were you originally from, and what are your culinary recollections as you look back on your formative years?
I am from the non-barbecue hotspot, but super culinarily, ethnically diverse borough of Queens in New York City.
All right.
It's where I grew up and spent my formative years, most of which consisted of bringing in meals. My family was not big on cooking, so I was not really exposed to a lot of homemade food, but I was exposed to a lot of South American and Asian and Indian and Italian. And
did you know prior to getting to Georgetown for college that you wanted to be a writer?
Yeah, sort of the academic that I did best at. And I just knew I had sort of a natural talent for it.
So as you're getting through college so this is where my force of culinary learning came to be for me. So I went to Ohio University. My mom was a great cook. She did all the cooking. When we were home, my dad did the grilling, occasionally on weekends, but it was like the standard fare: steaks, hamburgers, hot dogs, never any Southern style barbecue like we would tend to cover here on the show. By and large, I didn't get exposed to that until after I had even gotten married and talked to my cousin who was a barbecue caterer. But in college, aside from going to the dining hall, I had a buddy that really liked to cook. And as a well-laid plan to get laid, we both decided that we would figure out how to cook. So he was going to take the inside domestic type cooking. I was going to fashion myself a live fire master. And that's what we did. So we learned to cook really well. The idea portion of this whole thing didn't really pan out for us by and large, but nonetheless, we became fairly accomplished cooks in our own right. As you're getting through college, are you also picking up how to cook and learning different techniques at that point?
Yeah, absolutely. Because after my freshman year, I never lived in a student housing again. We always rented a house off campus. And I also spent a couple of summers staying in DC. So a lot of backyard, a lot of outdoor time, a lot of self-sufficiency on a limited budget, so trying to learn to add flavor. That's probably the biggest thing. Stretch the ingredients. And we had a Weber kettle, which is, I think the way pretty much everyone starts in the backyard. Some dubiously undercooked chicken and overcooked burgers along the way. Steep learning curve, but we got there.
After Georgetown, you do graduate work at Dartmouth. Did you have an idea right off the bat that you were going to get through undergrad and go to a graduate program?
No, actually, there was quite a lapse. By the time I went to grad school, I was already a fairly accomplished journalist. Oh. I just happened to I live near Dartmouth, and my wife works there, and I had been working at home for years traveling a lot, working at home, and I sort of craved intellectual stimulation and actually talking to people. So I started taking classes, which were sort of a fringe benefit on the side. So I didn't really need a master's for anything that I do professionally, but I figured it would give me a chance to dabble in things I had. I took screenwriting classes, things that I just never would have tried. And when you write, everything you write makes you a better writer, even if it's not a field, it just rounds you out a little bit. So
talking with Larry Olmsted, you can follow him on Twitter at Travel Food Guy if you'd like to see what he's up to. Let me ask you about college. I think I graduated high school in 92, and at that stage of life or whatever generation, parents seem to think that kids had to go to college. Maybe there wasn't a lot of kids going to college as they were getting through it, and that was viewed to be the thing that was going to make you successful. And so, we just did that. I wouldn't say it was necessarily a waste for me. It was a great life experience. But if I look at the degree that I got, what I'm doing today, it's laughable at best. But I think rounded me out as a human. But as you look at college present day, what are your thoughts on it? In other words, has it become an incorrect expectation for everyone to go to college after they finish high school?
Yeah, I think to some degree, yes. I mean, the biggest problem is the expense. It really frustrates me because, the cost of education, especially at elite or better colleges, has consistently, I mean, for our entire lifetime, way outpaced the cost of inflation. So there's really no, you hear these crazy numbers, it costs $80,000 a year or whatever, and there's no real good reason for that. It just shouldn't. So it's not so much that going to college is a bad idea. It's just at some point you have to say, is it worth what I'm paying? And there has been a shift as a result away from liberal arts. It still makes a lot of economic sense if, you're going to be an engineer or a lawyer or a doctor. But, I had a lot of, I get a lot of joy out of the liberal arts education and kind of the well-rounded citizen it makes you, but it's hard to justify paying for that. So, and also now with the way the job market is changing so fast, the one thing that I know as a homeowner is always going to be in demand is trades. If you're a plumber, you don't go to college, you're going to be working as much as you want and probably turning down 90% of the jobs because that's the way it is now.
As you got out of college, you said you didn't really need to go to graduate school as the fringe benefit. You were a pretty established writer. So as you get out of Georgetown and you make your way into the professional world, what are the first positions you were able to secure, and what lessons did you learn from them that shaped you going forward?
Right after I got out of college, I had a sales job for a publishing company for about 2 years. And, sales is sort of the key to everything. And when I went into writing full time, I realized that I'm really good at coming up with story ideas and pitches. And, editors are there waiting to hear a new idea. And they've, sort of heard it all, depending what it is. You take barbecue, say you run a big barbecue magazine, and I send you a pitch saying, hey, there's this place called Kansas City, and I want to do a story on it because they have barbecue, right? You're going to be like, okay, stupid. So I have to come up with an angle that makes you say, wow, nobody's ever pitched me that before. And that's what I became, really good at. And then I had a lot of like one-off freelance work, but my first really regular formative gig was I used to write a weekly column for Investors Business Daily, the competitor of the Wall Street Journal. There's only really 3 true national newspapers in the U.S., the Journal, the Investors Business Daily, and USA Today. And so, my column ran on the front page. It was called News for You. So it was sort of personal leisure, how to spend all that money you're making in the market kind of thing. And it was really good exposure, and they really liked me. And eventually they bumped me to 2 days a week. So that was for, several years, a pretty good piece of work.
I've never really understood how writers become, reporters or writers become writers. Are you searching out jobs, like applying for a full-time position, or is it just understood that there's going to be a lot of freelance stuff, or is that what the lifestyle is? You don't want to be tied down to, one place or another. You want to write what you want to write about, then whoever picks it up will run the story if they like it.
No, it's typically one or the other. So if you, especially if you go to journalism school, which I did, but, a top journalism school like Columbia or something, you go to work for the New York Times, or you go apply for a full-time job, and that may be, mean relocating occasionally because they have offices all over the world, sort of like being in the military. And, but I chose not to work on staff, which means I have to be freelance, but it gives me the latitude to, write about a lot of different things I enjoy. And I think in any job, they say, if you do what you like, you never work a day in your life. And I think about, there's people who, every topic you can imagine, there's somebody who writes on it full time. And in many cases they're passionate about it. But like if I had to write on video games full time, I'd shoot myself. But there's other people who love, video games, right? So, there's a lot. I write about things that I love. It's given me that latitude, and it also gives me the latitude to do books, which takes a big interruption in your schedule and a big time commitment, and would be harder to work around if you had a real job, as my mom would have said.
Larry, I'm sure we could spend both segments just talking about the background. It's very impressive. But let's spool up a little bit. It's 2022 now, and you're a multiple-time author. You had mentioned the books, of course. They've become bestsellers on all the lists you would want to have your book show up on. You write for the biggest news outlets in the country. Do you have an accolade or two that stands out to you most, or that you hold most dear?
Well, yeah, I mean, like I've gotten to meet a lot of celebrities, do things with them, play golf with PGA Tour players, ski with Olympians, but in certainly being a food person, my most memorable sort of outing like that was when I had dinner with the late, great Julia Childs. That's something very few people I know have done, and certainly no one will do again, really a food icon. And then in terms of me personally, my first big book, which did not do nearly as well as the subsequent ones, but which I'm still really proud of, is called Getting into Guinness. And it's about the history and social impact of the Guinness Book of World Records, which there's a lot of fun info in there, but most people don't know. But the Guinness Book of World Records is the best-selling copyrighted book in human history. Only the Bible, the Quran, and Chairman Mao's Little Red Book, none of which are copyrighted. And in the course of doing that, I took the sort of George Plimpton participatory journalism path, and I set 3 Guinness World Records, which I never would have thought I did. So I'm pretty proud of those, even though they're kind of esoteric and silly.
What are they?
The first one was the greatest distance traveled between 2 rounds of golf played in the same day, which was 7,496 miles, which is a very, very long day.
Where did you do that?
I played New South Wales Golf Club in Sydney, Australia, and Pelican Hill in Newport Beach, California later the same day.
Wow.
The second one was the longest marathon casino poker playing session, which was 72 hours and 2 minutes without a break, which has since been broken. But I used to play a lot of poker, so I was really into it.
What does that mean without a break? Like you didn't get up off the table one time?
No, every 8 hours, they give you a 15-minute break to use the bathroom, and you have to be evaluated by a physician because the Guinness has really strict rules for setting them, and anything what they consider marathon attempts, which are time-based, you have to have medical supervision.
Are you allowed? You're allowed to eat or whatever in those breaks?
Yeah,
like
you eat
calories?
while you play. Everything, eat, drink, everything is like during the event. So it's easier when you're playing poker than if you're like standing on your head.
Wow. That's insane. What's the third one?
The most ski runs skied in their entirety in 8 hours, which was 64, which is the only one of the records that is actually sort of physically a sporting challenge. And that was a very hard, long day. But again, the things that I love, golf, skiing, poker. So, work them all in.
As far as writing books and inspirations, what is inspiring you, or what inspires you to write a book, I guess? And then how long does it typically take? Maybe there isn't a typical answer, but how long does it typically take for you to go from concept of the book to the book hitting the shelves ready for sale?
So, I mean, the way I look at the books the same way I look at articles is I travel, I travel usually on assignment and have experiences, and something strikes me as interesting or questionable. And I say, wow, I wonder if anyone's like kind of ever looked at this this way. So I kind of put myself out there with a lot of input from the world around me, and something clicks. And then I decide that would be a great article. And then sometimes I think, wow, that would be a great book. In the case of my food book, I wrote 2 different articles, one about Kobe beef in Japan and one about Parmesan Reggiano cheese in Italy, unrelated at the time, but had a connection I didn't really realize till I started getting all this feedback from my readers. And that's when I started to think, hey, there might be a book here. So it's really hard to say because the development of the idea is usually based on articles I've already done. Then I kind of gel it together. Then I write a proposal. Then hopefully my agent sells it. Then I have, typically about 18 months to write the book. Then it goes to editing and then production. And so, in the short timeline, it's like a 2-year process from like signing the dotted line to maybe the book comes out. But usually it's more like 4 years because I spent the first 2 already doing research and background before I've even done the proposal.
Are you under contract with anybody to produce any amount of books under any amount of time, or is that not how you would typically operate?
No, usually if you're like a novelist, you get, might get a multi-book deal because you're just making the stuff up, but it's unpredictable how long, nonfiction books will take. I'm very happy with my current publisher, Algonquin, and we have a kind of a right of first refusal thing, but, so I would take my next idea to them. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they would love it.
We're talking with Larry Olmsted, getting through some of that background and talking about books and book writing. Of course, that's a favorite topic of ours here on the show. Can I put you on hold just for 1 second, Larry, and we'll come back and we'll actually talk about some barbecue stuff?
Sure.
All right, great. Stand by, and we will reconvene with Larry Olmsted here in just 1 second. Before we do that, I will mention my pals over at Yoder Smokers. As I had mentioned, their sales are brisk, to say the least. After talking with Tate over at Yoder Smokers, they're out 18 months, and that takes you to the end of next year. For those that can't do simple math, Yoder Smokers designs and builds all of their products right here in the States, and building pride through craftsmanship and world-class customer service is the backbone of how they've built the company. This approach translates into what can be a truly bespoke style product that elevates gatherings with friends and family, and honored to have a trusted place in the backyards of America. From pellet grills to wood-fueled offset pits and charcoal grills, consistent blue ribbon flavor has become synonymous with the Yoder Smokers name. And make no mistake, Yoder Smokers flavor-driven design is unique to each style of pit, and the team has developed their cookers to perform time and time again while outlasting the competition for generations to come. It's this generational thought that's rooted in the handmade products and defines the integrity of the core values: American-made quality, endless flavor. Those are the benchmarks of Yoder Smokers. Visit them online and check them out today, yodersmokers.com. That's yodersmokers.com. And we'll be back with more Larry Olmsted right after this. Stick around, be right back.
You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show, presented by the Ryder Deluxe Pellet Grills from Oklahoma Joe's. Let's get back to a guy who has more experience giving you his opinion than he actually has cooking. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
All right, welcome back. This portion of the show being brought to you by Smithfield. Head on over to smithfield.com for recipes, tips, tricks from well-known live-fire cooks like Darren Worth, Jess Pryles, Charles Cridlin. Mouth-watering flavor, no artificial ingredients. Smithfield Fresh Pork is quite simply some of the finest pork money can buy, and the trusted choice for top cooks to use at competitions and at home. And if you don't watch yourself, Joey Chestnut will choke the hell out of you at the Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest for protesting them. But nevertheless, Larry Olmsted joins us once again here on the show. Larry, let's talk a little bit about live fire. First experiences in barbecue and grilling. When were you exposed?
When I was growing up, in New York City, barbecue had not obviously taken off the way it is now, where it was still very regional, limited mostly to the South and Texas and Kansas City and places. The cities of the Northeast did not have a lot of authentic barbecue places, but there was one place in New York that I consider sort of like the progenitor of all of the modern barbecue places. It was called Tennessee Mountain. It was in the Village. It's been closed for years, but my family loved to eat out, and it was like the only real smoked barbecue place in New York, and we used to go there quite a bit when I was growing up. And I guess it was probably my dad who discovered it, or my older brother, I'm not sure, but like once we went, we couldn't stop going. it was sort of like the blue smoke before there was blue smoke. But and I think it was a little ahead of its time, which is probably why it went out of business, because New Yorkers weren't ready to understand what good barbecue was. But I have always I particularly love ribs, and I love ribs in every form. I used to, I love Asian style ribs. I've had deep fried ribs, Caribbean style ribs. So, I've always I guess I gravitated to barbecue probably, through a love of ribs, and now I love everything.
I've seen articles that you've done, some fairly recently, going over, top 5 cookers, or these are pretty unique, cool cookers to add to the backyard. When somebody comes up to you and says, Larry, I'm thinking of getting one or adding to the arsenal, what are the ones that you're recommending to folks, or how do you go about figuring out what to tell people to get, or at least recommend?
Yeah, I mean, it's really budget driven. So I kind of live in two worlds. A lot of the outlets I write for, like Forbes or MasterCard Luxury, are luxury publications, and people don't care. So it's easy for me to, put in there $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 grills, but most of my friends can't afford those. So, I keep, I think, for a person who wants a reliable, fairly priced smoker to get started, Traeger is a pretty good way to go. It's it's got all the bells and whistles for a reasonable price, but there's a lot. I just say go one step above the big box. Don't get your grill at Home Depot. Get it at you're at more of a specialty store, but it doesn't have to be a super specialized grill to get started.
How many do you own? You have a fleet of cookers in the back?
I do. I have about 15 different outdoor cooking devices. Wow. And I'm a big fan. I think of outdoor cooking is synonymous with entertaining. So we, especially I live in Vermont, and we have a relatively short spring to fall season for eating outside, but we also have relatively few restaurants. So, the social scene sort of revolves around rotating around people's houses. So when people come over, not only do I want to eat outside, but I want to be cooking something that's sort of fun and interactive and showy. So, I have a couple of pellet smokers. I'm a big fan of, if you're going to be smoking, pellet smokers the way to go. But I have kind of an Argentinian style open asado grill. I have a couple of Brazilian Rio Dizio rotisserie grills, multiple rotisseries. I have a big propane wood coal hybrid grill. So I like to kind of, depending, I have a product from iBarbecue that's a table with grills in the middle, sort of like a barbecue grill take on Benihana. So I want, people to be involved, have fun. Either we're standing around the grill, drinking beers and cooking, or people are cooking themselves, or, depending on what I'm making, I view the appliance as sort of the center of the entertainment.
You had mentioned that ribs are some of your favorite barbecue to eat. Is that then, of course, a favorite of yours to make? And then if it is, aside from ribs, what else do you like to barbecue or grill?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a favorite of mine. I am a big believer that either full-size pork ribs or St. Louis style are preferable to baby backs. I don't really get baby backs. They're not meaty enough, but I know people love them. And I also have a big fan of beef ribs, which I think are still, you see them more, but it used to basically be you had to go to Texas, and they're kind of underappreciated, but I love them. But I also, I made a recipe. I know you have Steven Raichlen on all the time. I know Steven. I made a recipe of his a couple of years ago for a barbecued or smoked pork belly. And it was so good that I make that a lot, especially when I have people over, because it's something that, a lot of people never have had. And if you're mixing up, meats, I'm a big fan of mixed platters, have some sausages on there too, different things. So, that's a good one because you can't eat that much of it, but it really adds to it. I love brisket. I love burnt ends. I don't make it that much because we usually don't have enough people to knock it all back. That's like a party food. And then I'm a big fan of big cuts of meat. I like to smoke a prime rib, bone-in prime rib. I think that's a really underrated. Tastes great, comes off great. So yeah, I'm always sort of experimenting. Most recently, I've been grilling, not smoking, a lot of fish, which is more challenging. We've just been eating more fish, and I just recently went on a fishing trip to Alaska, so I now have my freezer full of like a lifetime supply of salmon, cod, halibut that I'm trying to figure out how to cook. So,
Larry, as you've started to be a fan and then cover the industry, what's the evolution been like for you over the past 10 years or so?
You mean of my perception, or
yeah,
for
like
me
how
personally?
you've seen it covering it? What's changed? What have been the big benchmarks?
I mean, I think the great thing is that quality barbecue has become accessible early on. When places started opening in cities like New York or Cleveland, there was a lot of kind of pushback from the old school barbecue people, like, oh, you can't have good barbecue, in these places, which I don't think is true. You can have good barbecue anywhere as long as you know what you're doing. So I think it's in a way, it's kind of great that you don't have to go to Alabama to have barbecue, but it's still really worthwhile. I mean, I have traveled extensively across the South and the Southwest. I love, classic barbecue joints, and each one has something really distinctive, and some of the best things I have been at some of those, and typically they are better than the nouveau-y barbecue places you get in the cities. But it's nice that to be able to at least get something pretty good pretty easily. And then it's obviously made everybody has become a barbecue expert in a way, or they think they're a barbecue expert in a way that it used to be a very small number of people cooking, but that's sort of the same with every kind of food, thanks to social media and the Food Network and all of these shows. So I'm also one thing I've learned is there's not really such a thing as authentic. If people talk about authentic Mexican cuisine, but if you go to some town in Mexico, the two grandmas make it differently, where it comes from. Everybody has their own spin. There is no one right way to make any food. And, whether it's, you go to fish and chips in the UK, there's 50 different recipes. So I think it's the same way with barbecue, that we can't be too locked into this, you have to do it this particular way, as long as it tastes good.
Do you have people in the live fire space that are particularly inspiring to you?
Yeah, I love Michael Simon's work. Been at the Mabels in both Cleveland and Vegas. Big fan of it. Part of it is also because everything is good. Like, there's so many barbecue places I go to. Like, the ribs are really good, but the brisket isn't, or the pulled pork is really good, but the ribs aren't, and especially the sides. The sides aren't good, or the sides are really good, but the barbecue isn't. That's what I like. One thing I like about Mabel's is everything is really good. But some of my favorites, certainly Joe's in Kansas City, used to be Oklahoma Joe's, now just Joe's. Again, really solid across the board, from the sandwiches to the ribs. Central Barbecue in Memphis, I think, makes one of those perfect racks of ribs. I mean, sometimes I just look at pictures I've taken of them and be like, wow, that's something to dream of making. So not so much the chefs themselves as the institutions.
Do you have a favorite region of barbecue? When I say region, I know a lot of places like to say they're bringing their own region to the table here, but Carolina, Texas, Memphis, Kansas City, out of those traditional meccas, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, I mean, Kansas City to me is sort of the ultimate travel barbecue destination, just because it's really, it's more of a melting pot of the other styles. Their big credit is burnt ends, but they're influenced by all the other regions. So, there's a lot of places in the Carolinas where you can get great pulled pork, but you obviously can't get brisket. There's a lot of places in Texas where you can get great brisket, but you can't get pulled pork. And Kansas City is a place where you can get a really good example of pretty much every kind of barbecued meat. But I also really love the classic Texas, by the pound, the Kreutz markets kind of places, Smitty's, where you go in and a lot of those places, they're smoking everything: turkey, chicken, prime rib, and really good sausages in Texas too. But the other big regional thing, I'm a huge fan of the Carolina mustard based barbecue sauce. A lot of times I don't use barbecue sauce, but when I do, especially with pork, love that Carolina mustard based, that kind of, so that's probably the one regional specialty that, I mean, I still meet people. I have people come over who've never had it, and they're like, "Wow, this barbecue sauce is great," and they're expecting something that's like red and tomatoey. So, a big fan.
I wanted to play a soundbite for you. I don't know if you're familiar with sports columnist Nick Wright. This goes back a handful of months. Evidently a Kansas City guy, very passionate about Kansas City, so much so that he felt like he needed to kick Texas in the balls on the way out the door. Take a listen to this, and I'll get your reaction here in just a second.
Come to Kansas City for the barbecue, JJ. Stay for the championships.
Man.
That would be my recommendation.
Well, you have lived in Houston, so you are...
Yeah, I lived there for 4 years and ate what they... Listen, Houston folks, I understand it's been tough times. I empathize with you immensely. But Texas barbecue is fraudulent and it's not like bad compared to its reputation. It's bad compared to food. It's just not good.
Is Texas barbecue fraudulent to food?
I absolutely don't think so. I mean, just fantastic brisket. Like I said before, some great short, both beef ribs and beef short ribs. I've had some great, some really stellar barbecue meals in Texas. Though I have to say, I have never been to Houston. It's the largest city in the country I've not been to. I've been to San Antonio and Austin and Dallas and Lockhart and all around a lot of Texas, but I've never been to Houston. So who knows? Maybe it's an anomaly.
No, I mean, I think at this stage, Houston has some of the best barbecue. I believe it's got a small handful in the Texas Monthly Barbecue Top 50. I want to say, I might be wrong in this, but I think Truth Barbecue is in Houston, and that might even be in the top 10 or maybe top 5.
I think you're right.
I don't know when the last time Nick Wright was in Houston. Maybe it's been many years and hasn't seen the comeuppance of Texas barbecue, but just a funny thing because obviously he's a pro Kansas City guy. Speaking of Kansas City, you're also a KCBS certified judge. Why?
It originally started, so I also, another thing that I write a lot on is wine and spirits, and I got invited years ago to be a guest judge at the Jack Daniel's Invitational through the booze side of it, through a relationship with Jack Daniel's and Tennessee Whiskey, and so I had to sort of go get certified in order to do that, and it was so much fun that I later did Kansas City. And some smaller ones, or where I live in Vermont, there's one, the Harpoon Barbecue Fest, which is probably the biggest one in northern New England. I've judged, and it's not something, I know there's people who go like every weekend and want to do it. That's really not me. It's too much. It's like a birthday, like once a year you can sort of overindulge kind of thing. But it's great because I write a lot about food, and what people don't realize, people like whatever it is, say it's a steakhouse. People ate at this great steakhouse like 8 years ago and have a fond memory of it. And then they compare everything to it, and you have this life list, what's the best. But realistically, the only way to really do accurate tasting is comparatively. You have to taste both things at the same time. You can't compare the taste of a bite of steak you're having now with one you had 8 years ago. And that's the beauty of the way the barbecue is judged, is it's like a scientifically accurate kind of testing. Taste one after another, and you can see the differences.
One of the things that makes KCBS unique is they certify their barbecue judge. Of course, that leads to a tremendous amount of controversy every year when the board of directors seats come up for voting. There's always a claim to fix the judging this year, or the table of death, or don't forget about the angel table, this and that. How are you able to stay on top of whatever training that KCBS wants you to do in order to maintain this palate they think you should have as a certified barbecue judge?
Well, I haven't actually judged anything since before the pandemic, so I haven't worried about it a lot. But when I did the first time I did the course, I remember one of the things that really stuck with me was they were talking about tasting ribs and the texture of a rib, and it shouldn't be too tender. And it really stuck with me because I've always loved, like, I believe that when you take a bite out of a rib, you should sort of see your teeth marks. It should leave like a bite shaped missing piece of meat. It shouldn't pull the entire meat off the bone when you take a bite. And so many times I see people writing about not barbecue, don't know about barbecue, maybe restaurant critics in other cities saying, fall off the bone. And to them, that's a good thing. And to me, that's not a good thing. So, that was kind of the one really big takeaway that has stuck with me from that judging experience is texture and how important it is.
Last question before I let you go tonight, Larry, and appreciate the time. General barbecue awareness question, just to see what people actually know about this, because I'm steeped in it, so obviously I'm all about it. Did you have any awareness that there was something called the Barbecue Hall of Fame?
I did not until probably, I'm going to say 4 or 5 years ago. I get a lot of press releases. So if someone is in the Barbecue Hall of Fame or nominated, it will, brag about that, but I don't know where it is.
It's nowhere. I mean, the American Royal technically owns it, but there's no place that you could go visit, like Cooperstown or Canton, Ohio, or
there should be.
Yeah, well, of course, but that requires money and all this other stuff, a place to actually put it. But that's a story for a different day. Can you name anybody in it?
Oh, I would guess, unless you have to be dead, I would guess like Steven Raichlen.
Yes. Yes.
God, I'm blanking because I have so many. I have like a whole bookcase of barbecue cookbooks.
So here's the question that I guess that I'm driving at.
Yeah.
Do they not do a good enough job getting it out to the general public, or does the general public not even care? You have to be a dope like me to really find any relevance in a Barbecue Hall of Fame.
So I think the thing is that, what kind of gets me is now, especially with the all the different food competition shows, everybody who has ever been on one of those shows, whether they won or came in 15th place, considers themselves a celebrity chef, right? So I get tons of pitches. Somebody has a cookbook, they're opening a new restaurant, and they're like, celebrity chef so-and-so. And I'm like, well, I follow food really closely, and I never heard of them, and nobody I know ever heard of them. And then you look at why they're a celebrity, and it's because they were like 12th on the 15th season of Chopped or something. And I think it's the same way with like barbecue. There's so many good places, and if a new barbecue place opens in San Antonio with some sort of spin, and there's an article in like Food and Wine about it, or Bon Appetit, and those people become like relatively famous, but that happens all the time all over the country. And it's not that they don't deserve to be, but it just becomes like mind numbing how many different, names are involved in a field where there used to be a handful of pitmasters that were known.
Larry Olmsted joining us here on the show, did the background up front and talking some live fire here as we close out the segment. Larry, really appreciate the time this evening, and hopefully you enjoyed it enough where we could have you back a bunch more, because there's a lot of great food topics that we can talk about that are barbecue and non-barbecue related.
Yeah, absolutely. And love to talk about ingredients and meat and where your food comes from and all those good things too, because it affects the taste.
No doubt, Larry. Appreciate it, and we look forward to the next time. There he is.
You're listening to the barbecue.
Oh, there
All
we go.
guests appear via the Oklahoma
That's Larry
Joe's
Olmsted
Rider
right there.
Deluxe Pellet Grills Hotline.
Hopefully you enjoyed that segment, as I did. Looking forward to many more down the road. Now we can really dig into it. We set the stage, got the live fire background, and now we can start digging into the stuff that's going to affect you greatly going forward. Before we wrap it up here this evening, let me talk to you about my pal David McDowell and the Do Wellness program, David Leans, davidleans.com/BBQ. So we're starting week 3 yesterday. Yeah, because today's Tuesday. So we're trimming down a bit. Now we've added the training portion with weights, still sticking on the diet that he has recommended. And again, might be different for me than it might be for you, because in the end, I would just rather have somebody tell me what's for dinner than try to figure out what's for dinner. Not all the time. But in this instance, it's great. I know I'm going to have some chicken that I grilled up. I know that I can have a salad. I know I can have some rice. It's all laid out for me. Mundane, dopey stuff, and that's what works for me. So I'm able to hit it, stay on it. It's working for me. We checked in yesterday. We made some tweaks. Again, we added the weightlifting program that we started this morning. It's going swimmingly, and whenever I have any questions, I can text them, I can email them, talk to them on the phone yesterday for 30 minutes or so. So you're getting your money's worth. And again, it's $200 a month. It's not $500, $600, $700 a month for something that's canned. It's not really set to you. He's meeting you where you're at. He's not looking to take away everything, make your life miserable, but he is going to hold you accountable, make sure that you're doing what you're paying to do. Join me as we trim it up, thin it out, and muscle it up all at the same time. BBQ is the way to go. You can eat it all year round, still lose fat. davidleans.com/BBQ. That's davidleans.com/BBQ. We're back to wrap the show right after this. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Whole packers, full racks, legs and thighs, injecting butts. If you've never heard this before, you might think you found the best XXX show ever. Let's get back to the most homoerotic host out there today, Greg Rempe.
And we thank Larry Olmsted for joining me the last 2 segments. This portion of the show being brought to you by Vortic Watch Company. Back in the day, watches were made to be worn in the pocket. After World War II, wristwatches came into vogue. Pocket watches quickly became an afterthought, finding their ways into sock drawers and scrap heaps. Quite simply, a tragedy. Enter Vortic Watch, helping bridge the gap between America's storied watch manufacturing past and bringing it to the present day, where wristwatches are finding incredible popularity once again. Here's the coolest part. Each watch that Vortic makes is unique and one of a kind. Vortic, founded on the motto that America wasn't assembled, it was built. Check out VorticWatches.com for more information or to purchase. And the one they have out there today is unbelievable. All right, let's wrap it up all the way back in the first hour. We attempted to have Meathead. That didn't work so well, but we followed it up with Ted Conrad from Fireboard, who talked about the new analyzed portion of the app, which will now predict the time at whence your meat will finish. And as you get closer, that window will get tighter and tighter, so look for it in your app as it begins to update either automatically or you might have to uninstall it and reinstall it, depending on what kind of platform you're using. Then in the second hour, it was all Larry Olmsted all the time. Great background on him, and then talking about the live fire stuff that he's into and other accolades that he has within that space. So look forward to future chats with him as well. Big show planned for you next week. Steven Raichlen is in, of course, amongst a cast of others. So how do I always leave you? September 11th, 2001. I will never forget. Until next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, this is your program host, a proud U.S. American, Greg Rempe. Good night now.
Hi, this is Jeff Richards, Columbus, Ohio. You're listening to Barbecue Central.